So been delayed by traffic, so I'm going to speak very slowly in the hope that they will get here in time to hear the application. So the first item on the agenda are the minutes of the last meeting. Are you happy for me to sign them as a true record? Oh, thank you for playing along. Amy, any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, apologies from Councillor Val Henry.
Thank you. Declaration of interest.
Thank you, Chairman. So Councillor Kevin Denis has declared a non-pecuniary interest in item B1, land at Byway Cottage, as he is chairman of Allfold Sports and Social Club, which is based at the recreation ground that backs onto the application site. The club has no view on this planning application and has not made any representations to Waverley on it. Therefore, he does not feel that this interest has sufficient weight to prevent him from taking part in the decision-making on the application in his capacity as ward councillor and member of the Eastern Area Planning Committee.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the public?
Thank you, Chairman. None received.
Any questions from members?
Also none, Chairman. Thank you.
Beth, please have a relevant update for us.
I'm sorry, Chairman, there really are none. Thank you.
Okay, well, in that case, Beth, very quickly, can you run through the performance targets, please? No, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So on the update sheet, you'll see that in terms of our performance against the two government targets that on speed and quality, we are performing excellently. Thank you, Chairman.
Jolly good. Well, I think before we launch into the application, well, just the usual notice that in the event of site inspections being necessary, but as most of us have seen the site anyway, I doubt whether they will be, but should they will be held on Monday, the 11th of March, at a time to be agreed, and we'll just give Stuart time to park his car, and then I will ask Marie to introduce item B1, which is WA 2018-1220, land adjacent to Byway Cottage, Dunsfold Road, Allfold. Good evening, Stuart. We've been speaking very slowly, waiting for you to arrive. Mary's just behind me. Oh, is she? Okay. Anybody else? Did you come in convoy? Marie, if we can just let Mary Vorashevsky sit down, and then we'll start. Good evening. I think you can start now, Marie, as she's here.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for two dwellings at land adjacent to Byway Cottage. This is the location plan with the outline of the site in red. As you can see, it's a strip of land adjacent to Dunsfold Road, associated with the construction of two detached dwellings on the land adjacent. This is an aerial photo of the site. The site itself is here. And it's located within the countryside beyond the green belt. This is the block plan showing the proposed development. So it's a pair of semi-detached dwellings here, and these are the dwellings adjacent currently under construction. This is the site plan showing the accesses. Each property would have an access and associated parking areas and gardens to the side. These are the proposed elevations. This is the front elevation. It would have subordinate elements to the side. And here you can see the rear and both side elevations. This is the proposed ground floor. and proposed first floor plan. Each property would have 3 bedrooms. And here this is the proposed street scene. Apologies, it's not particularly clear, but these are the proposed new dwellings. And these are the 2 under construction and other properties beyond. Determining issues, matters of principal and technical opinion are impact on parking and highway safety, impact on trees and ancient woodland, biodiversity and compliance with habitat regulations, and matters of judgment are design and impact on visual amenity and the countryside beyond the green belt, and impact on residential amenity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Marie. Members, Councillor Denis.
Thank you very much. Firstly, can I thank the members who attended the site visit? It was some time ago now, and I know a couple of people may have gone independently, but I think in this case it was really important to actually see the size of the plot and how cramped this application is, and I think that was really important, so I'm grateful for that. I think it's important to look at the recent application, WA 2015-1220, which are the 2 detached houses to the east as you look at that map on site. When the application was submitted, the Parish Council did not object. The 2 houses set slightly back from the road with medium-sized gardens fitted in with the houses on that side of the road. So there was no objection, there was a support. And even if you read that officer's report, it says it highlights the setback nature of the development. The application was approved, and quite rightly so. There were 14 conditions for those 2 houses. Condition 10 reads, and I think the report says condition 11, so it's actually condition 10, reads, the land to the east of cottage 1, and that's the left of the 2 cottages, and included in the red line shall form an integral part of the garden of cottage 1 as amenity land. So the property on the left that's been built, there's a condition to say the land to the west, where this application is part of the garden. And the reason that condition was set reads, in order to ensure that the character and amenity of the area is maintained and to accord the policies D1 and D4 of the Waverley Borough Plan 2002. We know this policy has been retained and carries full weight. So what has changed with this application before you tonight? If this application is approved, then they will technically be in breach of the condition from the previous application. Yes, they can apply to us to change this, but the Planning Department felt this was required to protect the character and amenity of the area, and nothing has changed. In fact, this application makes the situation far more damaging. So tonight's application is to build a pair of semi-detached houses in this garden, as well as amenity space and car parking. So from the site visit, colleagues would have seen the cramped nature of the plot and wondered how they were going to squeeze this in. The original plot was 0.1492 hectares for the 2 detached houses and gardens. The application for the semi-detached houses is 0.045 hectares. So this application amounts to 31% only of the original site. This is the reason why Waverley placed condition 10, and that condition was appropriate. Page 10 of the officer's report highlights the Farnham neighbourhood plan. I don't think this is applicable, but fails to mention the Allfold initiative, which highlights the vision of the village. This development does not reflect the Allfold initiative. Page 13 states that the dwellings would be set back at least 2 metres from the highway. Well, we know that we've got the verge of the highway and the hedging within that calculation, so the front would be very close to the applicant's boundary and hedge. The same goes to the rear, and it'll be about 5 foot from the boundary at the very most. Even worse is the hedging at the back, and I'm sure members will remember that. Now, we know the applicant can cut any hedging over that hangs over their side, but he cannot cut it back on the parish-owned land, and not the height of the hedge. I think the hedge must be 20 foot high. So even cutting back to their boundary, there will be a 20-foot high hedge just a few feet from the back wall. The officer accepts that this will be at odds with existing buildings, except for Tollgate to the south. Tollgate Cottage was built in the early 1800s. I think it goes back to 1809. And then when the road from Horsham to Guildford was built, that was built to go right in front of it so we could collect money. So to quote that as a reasonable example, I think it's a little bit close to the mark. Houses that close to the road and verge does not fit into the pattern of development and detracts from the street scene. Page 14 states that the second double bedroom in both dwellings fails to meet the recommended floor area of 11.5. I'm not sure what the actual size is. Yes, there's a benefit of an ensuite, but that's about the resale value. The officer stated it would have a reasonable outlook. Well, from the rear, it'd be mostly hedging, just a few feet away, and to the front, to the road and the houses opposite. There are nationally described space standards. Both dwellings fail this on the second bedroom. No matter how we dress this up, a fail is a fail. Parking. Now, we have clear guidelines that the two dwellings should have 5 spaces. They only have 4. And when you have a look at the plans, it'd be really difficult for enabled cars, once they have driven in frontwards, to manoeuvre and turn so they can drive out in a forward gear. And I think especially, thank you, on the one on the right, if the parking space nearest to the road is occupied and you drive in frontwards, that is going to be exceptionally difficult to turn around in that small space with a car. I can't see how it's going to be done. I mean, the road is dangerous. 5 spaces will allow visitors park, and again, it fails the policy. Yes, they could park on the road. Good luck to them, I wouldn't. Turning to the access and design statement. The applicants have stated that the Cottage 1, which is the first house nearest to the boundary, which is a 4-bedroom detached house with conservatory and garage, does not require so much amenity space, which is disproportionate to the size of the dwelling and is unviable as it is so distant from the main house. It's got to be all of about 20 yards. I mean, I've never heard such a ridiculous statement in a design statement. Section 6.1 under access for all, it states, the new dwelling will comply with the minimum standards set out in the Department for Communities and Local Government Space Standards. Well, we know that's not correct. The planned officer is clear both dwellings fail this. Just touch a couple of points before I finish. Members would have read the letters from residents who are concerned about the amenity view that will be supported by 2 houses right on the street edge. Their views on bins and road safety. It appears there may be some sort of, bin storage, but it's going to be very, very close to the main road. Finally, there's no condition about water provision and the minimum electric charging point for both premises. This is not about trying to squeeze a 1.5 pint glass, and I've used that saying before. It's more about trying to squeeze it in a 1/4 pint glass. Allfold has an allocation of 125 housing, and so far it's allocated 125. I do not see that where there's this desperate need to approve this cramped form of development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Councillor Goodridge.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I ran the planning officer office this morning because I was disappointed that in our papers we didn't have the site plan, which I half guessed at when I looked at on page 8, the top plan, which I thought was the hedge, which it is, at the back. But I think a site plan, and particularly on an application like this, would have been helpful and does illustrate to me that I do think it's too much in a site. I mean, the fact that it's in front of the building line, the fact that I appreciate on the cars, it's going to be difficult to put an objection on that ground on the basis the highways seem to be, as usual, totally happy on the whole thing. But I think the residential amenity for the prospective people who would buy those houses is not going to be good. I mean, there's no back garden, in effect, and I didn't go to the site visit whenever it was, but if this hedge is 20 foot high, it's going to be pretty dark kitchens, and I appreciate that the modern person buying a house now doesn't necessarily want a lot of garden, but I just think it's I'm not at all happy about it, but would welcome to hear what other people has to say.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Dinas very eloquently went through a long list of reasons why we need to have a very good look at this. I just want to reiterate three of the issues which I see as planning creep. So the condition 10 from the previous, the adjacent application, you know, it was clearly stated it's a condition, and we undermine our own planning process if we don't respect the conditions that are applied to things that we approve. So I'm really uncomfortable with that. Space standards, yeah, we don't have to adhere to space standards, absolutely. But you know, I've been through the papers, and one of the things I've picked up, was the failure to meet the space standards. It's just disappointing. We want quality housing stock in our borough, and I don't feel happy about that. I could probably live with that if that was the only problem, but it's an example of planning creep. And then the parking. There are places where 4 spaces would be acceptable, you know, somewhere where there's a reasonable amount of public transport and people aren't going to be totally reliant on cars. But that doesn't describe Oldfold. We have our standards for a purpose, or we have our guidelines for a purpose, and I'd feel really uncomfortable. This is not a place where parking on the road or on the pavement is an acceptable alternative to being able to park within curtilage. And it's also been pointed out, even if you could park in curtilage, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting in and out. So for those 3 reasons, which I see as planning creep, I'll really struggle to support this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Band.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I did go on the site visit, and it's extremely useful, and I do recall a sheer astonishment at trying to put these 2 pair of houses on this particular site. I think, as others have said, the highways issue and the parking issue have been taken away from us, because our friends in Carry County Council seem to think it's okay. I wouldn't think it is, but I mean, I don't think we can advance that as a reason for refusing. I think the impact on the street scene and the amenity value, though, on trying to squeeze two sub-size properties onto an extremely small site is, to my mind, quite unacceptable. If they'd maintained the actual building line, existing houses, there would be no back garden, there'd be into the sports ground. So, I mean, I think this shows what a tight squeeze it really is. And I think the other issue is, again, it is certainly overtaking, you know, a condition on a previous application. I appreciate it's not impossible to do that, given appropriate circumstances, but I don't think this is an appropriate circumstance. I think it is squeezing too much into too small a site, and I wouldn't be in favour of approving this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chairman. I too am having problems with this application and the size of it on such a small plot. I went and visited the site. I don't agree with highways, actually. When I actually was leaving the site and from the boundary, the cars were whizzing past, and I do fail to see how you can get out of that drive safely. That aside, Surrey Highways have said it's okay. But what I feel on this one is about the space standards. We need to be consistent. Previously, we refused an application for Barclays Homes on a Cranley site because the properties didn't meet technical space standards, and we need to set a consistent message out to developers to say that we want houses that meet technical space standards. So for that reason, and because I was part of that previous decision making, I feel that at this moment in time that I'm not minded to support this application. I also do not think that gardens of this size are part of the character, the general character of Oldfold. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Byrne.
Well, like so many of us, we did do the site visit, and I, like others, was astounded that we wanted to squeeze a property on such a narrow strip of land. We have to live within all of our areas houses that are built right up to the road, or virtually up to the road, because we had carts running backwards and forwards with horses. We now have large lorries, let alone all the cars. The noise and the disturbance to any future residents is wrong. We're just jamming up the area for the sake of a very tiny plot. I can't see a good reason to support this at all.
Thank you. Councillor Stennett.
Thank you, Chairman. Local knowledge here. The highways, like my colleagues said, I think is a very important issue. And this road does suffer with fog very badly in the winter. I personally had a very bad accident there many years ago. And if vehicles were parked in the road, it would be awful. And I just don't believe that we're here sitting recommending this for approval. And I think highways, as Michael Goodridge, my fellow councillor, said, haven't looked at this properly. I think it's extremely dangerous. It's extremely cramped. And I just fail to see how they're going to get out of there safely. And I would be definitely against it on road safety. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to agree with everything that's been said. I was on the site visit, and at the time I was amazed at how small this site was, to think that it could accommodate 2 3-bedroom houses. I did query the actual layout, the boundaries at the time, and that's why it was removed from the agenda last time, to give the applicant a chance to carry out a proper measured survey, which apparently he has done. But I see, even looking at this drawing in front of it, this plan in front of us, that all of the hedge on the rear boundary is outside of the boundary, whereas in fact the boundary runs through the middle of the hedge. So I think even there they're being slightly disingenuous and have sort of moved things to suit themselves better. So I'm tending to go along with everybody else, but if anybody else wishes to speak, if not, if we go to the recommendation, which is that subject to conditions 1 to 8 and informatives 1 to 4, permission be granted. All those in favour?
That's none, Chairman.
And those against?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
So that application is refused. Now, can I have a proposal and seconder proposed by Councillor Denis to, presumably to refuse the application, seconded by Councillor Stennett, and can I have some planning reasons, please?
Thank you, Chair. Reason one I would suggest is the proposed development would have an overbearing impact from its size, bulk, mass in a cramped form of development within a small plot size, which would amount to overdevelopment of the site. Design of the dwelling would result in conditions harmful to residential amenity. It would be intrusive in the street scene, and the character of the area would not be respected. And such a proposal will be contrary to policies TD1 and RE1, and please correct me if I'm wrong, of the Local Plan Part 1, 2018, and retain policies D1 and D4 of the Local Plan 2002 and guidance contained within the NPPF 2018. The second reason would be the proposal would fail to provide a high standard of amenity for future occupiers by reason of insufficient space associated with each dwelling, contrary to policies TD1 of the Local Plan 2018 Part 1 and retain policies D1 and D4 of the Local Plan 2002. And the third reason, the proposed development would not provide adequate on-site vehicle parking spaces to meet the requirements of Waverley Borough Council Parking Guidelines 2013. Consequently, the proposed development would be likely to result in inconvenience to surrounding residents as a result of street parking. The proposal would fail to comply with policy TD1 of the Local Plan Part 1, 2018, and the retained policies D1 and D4 of the Local Plan 2002 and the Council's Parking Guidance 2013 and the MPPPF 2018. I'm sure others may well have some comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Townsend.
Can Can I just ask officers about the reason for refusal? Would there be any reason for refusal because of damage to countryside beyond the green belt, or is this actually a garden site?
Chair, if I can come in on there. I think that the only thing that we could really refuse the application on is the cramped nature of the site. I think that would relate to the character of the area and the street scene, but not necessarily countryside, because we've established it's not an isolated dwellings in the countryside. Acknowledge what you're saying as well about the space standards. However, it is only the second bedroom that falls slightly under the standards, and overall, the total floor space of each dwelling is it exceeds the standards by 14 square metres. Also understand your concerns about the parking and highway safety. However, we don't have that objection from the highways officer. Therefore, it wouldn't be reasonable to object on the safety aspect of it.
My reason was for the parking, and therefore people having to park outside.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the cramped nature of the site would be appropriate if members do feel that that's a reason.
So, officers, would you like to sum up? I think Councillor Denis has put his reasons very eloquently, but if you could just guide us in the actual wording of the reasons.
I think the first reason you stated that it would be overbearing, cramped, harmful to residential amenity. I think it would really be just the street scene and the character of the area. So overdevelopment and cramped, overbearing and residential amenity, I'm not so sure about in what you meant by that aspect of it.
I talked about the design of the dwelling, i.e. being right onto the street scene, would be harmful to the residential amenity, because it's, as you can see from the plans, it is within feet of the front of the road. All the other properties on that side of the road are set back 20 to 30 foot with large gardens. So you've suddenly got this house right onto the main street, and where it's harmful to the amenity to everybody else. Does that?
Yes, so the visual amenity. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
So, members, based on, proposed by Councillor Denis and seconded by Councillor Stewart-Stennett, and based on the reasons expounded by Councillor Denis and clarified by Marie, all those in favour of rejecting this application?
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. That's our business for this evening. Thank you very much for finishing so early. Central will be over the moon.